guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to replace the fuel pump and filter on a 2004 Lexus GS 300. The process is the same for any second generation Lexus GS. This includes the models GS 300, 400 and 430 and includes the model years 1998 through 2005. I'll be showing you how to remove the old fuel pump and filter assembly from the tank, disassemble everything, install the new filter and pump, and then put everything back together again. We'll also be draining the old gas from the tank as I've been storing this car for a while waiting for my engine to be built. If you're new to the channel, welcome again, and do consider hitting the like and subscribe button down below if you'd like to see more of my automotive DIY content. If you're already a subscriber, I'd like to take this moment to thank you for your support. It really means a lot to me. So let's get right into it. Before we get started, a very important warning. Whenever you work with any part of the fuel system, as we are going to be in this video, remember to keep away all sources of ignition such as lighters or cigarettes. Gasoline and its vapors are extremely flammable and therefore you need to be very careful. The fuel pump is located under the rear seat cushion. It is held in by a pair of plastic clips. Pull upwards really hard and the cushion will come off. The fuel pump is located on the driver's side of the rear seat. The first thing to do is remove this protective plate above the fuel pump, which is held in by 3 10mm plastic nuts. Doing this exposes the fuel pump connector and the fuel feed line. Remove the connector by pushing in the plastic tab and pulling it out. To remove the fuel feed line, you'll first need to remove this yellow plastic clip that holds it in. Use a pick tool to pry it out as shown. Before you remove the fuel line, remember that a little bit of fuel may spill out. Don't make the mistake that I did and keep a rag handy to catch all the fuel. Next, we need to remove the 8 Phillips screws holding the top metal plate to the tank. Once you do this, you can start lifting the fuel pump assembly out of the tank. Before you can remove it completely, you'll have to remove this fuel hose as well. Use a pair of pliers to compress the hose clamp and slide it down, and then remove the hose by sliding it off. It can be on pretty tight sometimes, so you may have to use a pick tool to remove it as shown. Be careful not to damage or puncture the hose. Once you do this, you can remove the entire fuel pump assembly from the tank. While removing it, you'll have to tilt it so you can get the fuel level sensor out of the way as shown. Be very careful not to damage or bend the level sensor. After you remove the fuel pump assembly, cover the open hole so that no dust or debris gets in. The gas tank in the GS is split into 2 halves, one on either side of the rear seat. Since I want to drain all the fuel in the tank, I also need to remove this fuel level sensor assembly which is located on the passenger side of the fuel tank. If you're replacing just the fuel filter or the pump, you can skip ahead to the next chapter in the video. First, remove these 2 10mm plastic nuts holding the top cover on. Remove the electrical connector by pushing in the tab and pulling on it. And then remove the 5 Phillips screws holding the center assembly to the tank. Just like with the fuel pump on the other side, you'll have to slightly tilt it so you can get the level sensor out of the way while removing it. Don't forget to cover up the open hole. Now we can start disassembling the fuel pump and filter assembly so we can get to the fuel pump and replace it. Loosen the fuel pump gasket located on the top by using a flathead screwdriver. Next, we'll need to remove the number 2 fuel suction support at the bottom of the assembly. It is held to the fuel filter by using these snap claws. Pry upwards on the snap claws as shown. Remove this rubber cushion under the fuel pump and keep it safe as we need to reinstall it. Next, we need to remove the fuel pressure regulator. First, release the plastic tube from its clamp, and then pry downwards using a pry tool to remove the regulator as shown. We'll be replacing this O-ring. Next, we need to remove the fuel suction filter which is held to the fuel pump by a little clip. As shown here, use a pry tool to pry in between the fuel pump and the filter, and both the filter and the clip should come off. Now we can go ahead and separate the top suction plate off of the rest of the assembly. It is held to the filter using these snap claws. First, remove this electrical connector to the fuel pump, and then pry upwards on the snap claws just like before to release the top suction plate. You can now remove the old fuel pump gasket by just sliding it off. For this O-ring in the top suction plate, I couldn't find a replacement part online anywhere. Therefore, we're just going to be reusing it. So keep it safe. Now all that's left is to remove the fuel pump from the fuel filter. The fuel pump is held to the filter by a press fit O-ring and it can be on pretty tight. Since I'm not too worried about the pump as I'm replacing it, I just used a pry tool to pry downwards and the fuel pump basically flew off. Obviously be more careful if you're replacing just the fuel filter and need to reuse your old fuel pump. Now we can go ahead and suck out all the old gas from the tank. As you can see, I'm using an electrical pump to do this. A very important warning. Whenever you're removing gas from your car, always transfer it to a container which has been approved for storing gasoline. As you can see, at this point I'm just transferring the gas to a plastic bucket. But the very next day, I went out and purchased some proper containers for gasoline and transferred all the gas from the plastic bucket to the containers. If you try to store gasoline in a container which has not been designed for it, things can go wrong pretty quick. Gasoline expands pretty quickly, especially in hot conditions, and this can split the container and lead to spillages. Whenever you store gas, make sure to keep it in a dry place away from any sources of ignition such as lighters. Now we can go ahead and start assembling our new fuel pump and filter assembly. The new fuel pump comes with its own O-ring in the package, but we'll need to reuse these two plastic clips from the old fuel pump. Remove the first clip using a pry tool as shown, followed by the old O-ring, and finally the other plastic clip. The O-ring needs to be covered with a light coat of gasoline before you install it. On the new fuel pump, first install the plastic clip, followed by the new O-ring, and finally press in the second plastic clip. Don't forget to remove this plastic cover at the bottom. Here is the new fuel filter we'll be using, along with the new fuel pump we just assembled. Push the fuel pump firmly into the filter until it snaps into place. Next, we can install the fuel suction plate to the fuel filter. Connect the electrical connector for the fuel pump, and then press the suction plate down onto the filter until it snaps into place. Now is a good time to install the new fuel pump gasket. The next step is to install the fuel suction filter along with its clip. Install the filter to the bottom of the fuel pump by pressing down as shown. Once the filter is secure, you need to install the holding clip. Place the clip on the stem as shown, and using a very small socket and a hammer, tap until the clip is secure. Next up is installing the fuel pressure regulator. Just like before, don't forget to give the new O-ring a light coat of gasoline. Put the new O-ring on as shown. Install the fuel pressure regulator by pushing upwards like this until the O-ring slides into place. Turn the regulator until the pipe snaps into the clamp and it looks like this. Before installing the lower fuel suction plate, don't forget the rubber cushion. Slide the lower suction plate on until the snap claws catch on the clips. I forgot to turn the fuel pressure regulator as I had mentioned earlier, so I had to turn it after I installed the lower suction plate. Now we can go ahead and reinstall the entire assembly back into the fuel tank. Don't forget to pull this hose out first, as we have to connect it to the fuel pressure regulator before we can install the fuel pump into the tank. Install the fuel pump assembly partially into the gas tank as shown, and then connect the hose to the fuel pressure regulator. My camera died at this point, but make sure to have this hose all the way up to the top like this. And don't forget to slide the clamp up all the way so that it secures the hose. Now you can completely lower the assembly back into the gas tank and install the top metal plate. Install the 8 Phillips screws holding the metal plate to the gas tank, and then reconnect the fuel feed line. Don't forget to reinstall the yellow plastic clip which secures the line. Reconnect the electrical connector and then install the top metal plate by tightening down the 3 10mm plastic nuts. That completes the reinstallation of the fuel pump and filter. If you also remove the fuel level sender assembly on the other side, reinstalling it is pretty easy. Tilt the assembly and carefully lower it back into the gas tank as shown. Reinstall the 5 Phillips screws. Reconnect the electrical connector and then install the top metal plate and tighten down the 2 10mm plastic nuts. The final step is to install the rear seat cushion. Set the cushion down and give it a firm push downwards until it snaps into place. Do the same for the clip on the other side as well. That completes the installation process. So that brings us to the end of today's video. If you liked it and would like to see more of my automotive DIY content, don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.